Oh, you know you've been expecting this one. And, well, if you've watched some of our stuff in the last couple of months, you know that I am also a big fan of tanks. So let's see what the most fun tank is to play in Shadowlands. And of course, this is 100% my opinion. This is what I've played through, what I have tested. This doesn't mean it's a DPS or a performance tier list. That's not what this is. This is about fun. This is about how interesting a class is to play, the utility that it can do, of course, a little bit of the damage that it can do and take, because, you know, we're talking tanks now, and, you know, how fun overall it is to play, how much it changed from BFA and stuff like that. So that's what we will be checking in today's video, but not before you actually subscribe and enable those notifications, at least if you like our video, because guys, listen, like, you know the spiel, right? Kind of everybody says it now, but like a whole bunch of you guys are not subscribed. Let's not mention the bell thingy. And it does help channels out, guys. It does help channels out to know that our subscribers are watching, and we're so close to 100K. Can you believe we're almost getting 100K? So without further ado, let's check out the tanks in Shadowlands. So let's start with the Blood Decay. Now, Blood Decay has a special place in my heart, everybody. It has one of the coolest fantasy out there. It's one of the most self-sustained tank. Obviously, you know this. It has the most amount of self-healing. It's also probably the only tank that's not really designed to tackle the type of encounters that are within WoW. It's because when you have tanks like warriors with shield block and bears with iron furs, that's a mitigation that they pop before the damage comes in. And I've talked about this in multiple Blood Decay videos, but Blood Decay doesn't have that. Marrowrend is not that. The equivalent for Blood Decay is Death Strike, and you do that after you take the damage. So the most important part is to survive the damage and then mitigate it, which is counterintuitive for modern WoW and how the combat works, which makes Blood Decay a little bit iffy when it comes to design. It also makes the class a little bit hard to balance properly, because if you don't have a proper way to tackle the content as a tank, to tackle damage intake, then you're either incredibly weak, which has been the history of Blood Decay compared to the other tanks for the past couple of years, or you are incredibly strong, aka Legion Blood Decay, if you guys remember that. But that aside, in terms of playstyle, not much change for Blood Decay. We have Ossuary baseline in Shadowlands, which is really good. We have Relish in Bloods as one of the new talents. I think Voracious was also changed, and it has some functions in high-end content, and I cannot personally wait to test it out there. But in terms of class design, aside from Covenants and Conduits and Legendaries, Blood Decay kind of plays the same, and it's still a really fun tank to play. It can be incredibly strong if played correctly. It mathematically will probably, numerically at least, will never reach the heights of other tanks unless it's going to be completely redesigned, unless Blood Decays can get active mitigation, and I'm not talking about Rune Tap here, clearly. For me personally, Blood Decay is, through all of his kits, through grasps, through self-sustain, because you can survive on your own for such a long time. Personally, for me, Blood Decay is a solid S tier. This is my personal opinion, of course. That doesn't mean it's the best performing tank, but it's a tank that I feel very comfortable with, and I feel like I don't rely on my party so much. And if that's the tank for you, if you like to, you know, make sure that you don't rely a lot on your healer, because your healer will heal you, but he will heal you for about, I don't know, 20 to 40% of the damage that you take. Normally, that's what should happen. And if the healer is healing you for more, then maybe you're not doing your job properly. Next up, let's take a look at the Brewmaster Monk. Oh boy. Now, the Monk has been on a roller coaster ride in BFA, from the best to the worst, to the best to the worst. Although I don't think it was the worst at any point, but it definitely went up and down in terms of performance. In terms of fun, Brewmaster is, I mean, it's as fun as any Monk spec can be. It is a very fun tank. It changed in Shadowlands, obviously. You no longer have Iron Skin Brew, you have Shuffle, which personally that's a big letdown, because managing Iron Skin Brews and Purifying Brews was a need mechanic to tackle, to master, because you never had enough charges if you were fighting a tough enough battle, right? You probably would have to kite at some point. But Stagger was always an interesting mechanic, and managing it properly felt like the cool thing that you can do with Brewmaster, although that kind of has been taken away now because with Celestial Brew being baseline a 1 minute cooldown, there's not really much to manage. You kind of either go for overall damage smoothness and tankiness and just pop it off cooldown, as how I felt it, or if the fight is tough enough and the damage intake is high enough, you can stack up those purifying charges to make that Celestial Brew big and big and big and save it for that one moment when you know you're gonna be hit pretty hard. If you can time it properly, then that can be really good, because Celestial Brew being nerfed about what 3 to 4 times now is still, if used correctly, can pretty much double your life bar, or at least give you another life bar on top of your current life bar, which is interesting. Now with stagger mitigating magic damage again, because I think they've changed that also, Celestial Brew is really good against big magic hits, although you won't really see, I don't think we will ever see magic hits being that strong where Celestial Brew is just enough to survive, because that means every other tank will die, since no other tank has that kind of an absorb on demand on one global. The playstyle changed maybe a little bit in terms of maybe priority, because now you can play Blackout Combo if you want. I've played Blackout Combo and it's one of the more interesting talents, and that can change and make the playstyle vary. I don't know how viable it is, let's say once you reach plus 20s and higher and stuff like that, but Blackout Combo is one of the things that can spice up a rotation. Otherwise, High Tolerance is still the same playstyle. Celestial Flames, which is an interesting concept, is one of the last road talents. It's one of the new talents that weren't properly balanced yet, so I don't know how good it will be, but if it will be good, then that can spice up the rotation a little bit. So normally, because of all the nerfs, I would probably put, in terms of fun aspect, because we know the monk utility, it's all there, it's all good, I would probably put Monk in B tier. But if they can make all of the talents balanced and make them worth it, which surprisingly they did for Blood Decay at least a certain amount, and they definitely did for other tanks as well, I could easily see Brewmaster being an A tier tank for me in terms of fun. But right now for me it's a solid B tier. I always loved the monk playstyle, but I feel like it's been gutted in Shadowlands, and even with something like the Cake Smash legendary, that could be really fun, but it's just not there. I just don't really feel like I am tanking. I feel like I'm just soaking damage. That's never a fun thing for a proper tank. And speaking of just soaking damage, we have the bear. Oh boy. Well, the bear actually didn't get almost any changes. We have the last talent bro kind of changed a little bit, Pulverize got changed a little bit, and we have the new Tooth and Claw, which is interesting, but that's single target. That doesn't see a lot of Mythic Plus play, and Mythic Plus play is kind of the same with Rend and Tear for like, what is this, the 5th year in a row? Come on, Blizzard. At least they did change Pulverize a little bit, and they added Tooth and Claw. We'll see how well and balanced they are. They didn't really seem outstanding so far. Maybe they're good here and there, but they're not outstanding. They're not like the new kid on the block. You don't feel like you got, oh my god, we're in Shadowlands now, I have this new array of tools that I can work with. Not really, no. The legendaries are okay, I guess. Obviously, there's the new contender, the new legendary, which just goes to show how much Bear needs proper love, and that's the Ursox Fury Remembered legendary, or the Thrash legendary, where you can spam Thrash and the Thrash damage turns into an Absorb Shield based on a percentage of the damage you dealt. I think it was just nerfed a couple of weeks ago. I don't know, there are other Thrash legendaries as well, but obviously this one actually put Bear into the viable section, because without this, before this legendary was added, Bear was just not optimal. It was just not optimal, and we cannot have a legendary making a tank optimal. It was obviously overpowered after some point, and I think still now it's still above average, but that's just because of one legendary. Blizzard can just fuck the whole class up with one nerf to that legendary. Bear needs more. Bear can be a very interesting tank. It's a druid. We can have synergies, like animalistic synergies, like instead of just being a big sponge with a lot of armor, capping armor, maybe it can have some interesting mechanics. Bear is another tank that I hold close to my heart because I like the fantasy I always loved the fantasy of bear, but it's just not there for me, so I will just have to move it into, fortunately, B tier. It might be lower if I didn't like the fantasy of bear and druid so much. It would probably be lower. And even with the legendary, it's probably in B tier just because of the legendary. And if I do end up playing bear, I probably won't enjoy my time unless I play the Thrash legendary. And now we go to the Prot Paladin. My oh my, this is what tanks should have received across the board. Same thing as Prot Paladin. Prot Paladin talents have been almost entirely swapped and flipped and fucked and changed and reworked. Obviously the tank came back to Holy Power, which you probably have noticed if you have been playing the pre-patch, and it's a lot of fun. Obviously in pre-patch right now it's a little bit crazy with the Azurite, but even if that goes away, it's even more fun in Shadowlands with the Avenger Shield legendary that resets and you just pop shields left and fucking right. Not even that, there's the Shield of the Righteous legendary, which also is very interesting and also does damage and it's fun. And if you really want to be immortal, you can play the Judgment legendary, which is an incredible amount of holy power and essentially transforms your wings into a major defensive cooldown, which it wasn't really like that so far. Obviously offered its defensive benefits in the extra crit, but it was mostly a DPS cooldown. Now, if you play the Judgment legendary, which the name escapes me at the moment, you'll become, within wings, a little god of tankiness, which is what tanks should be. And of course, we take the conversation into the utility discussion because god damn it, is Prot Paladin not a Swiss Army knife of group utility? Obviously we have Aura's back, which is great. You have Blessing of Sacrifice, Blessing of Protection, Spell Warding if you want to talent into it, Freedom, and all these have uses in pretty much all of the content in Shadowlands one way or another, so you're never not going to have an answer to something that's going on. And let's not forget probably my favorite Prot Paladin mechanic, and that is Hand of the Protector, which is a talent, but it's on a row where you don't sacrifice a lot to get it. You might sacrifice one or the other, but it's good. What that does is that makes your Word of Glory able to be cast on a party member for the bonus healing, because you can cast it on a party member either way, but the bonus healing based on the missing HP is only activated through Hand of the Protector. That essentially 0s to 100 heal a party member. That happens very often. That is a good in case shit mechanic to save your party member if that happens. And of course coupled it with the new passive, which has its name changed again. I think it was changed about a couple of weeks ago, where after 5 Shield of the Righteous your next Word of Glory is free and you can just cast it and actually save your party members numerous times from lethal damage, or at least what would follow something that would take them down to, like, I don't know, 10% HP. That was really good. And of course we have Lay on Hands, we have Dispels, we have stuns and blinds and silences. Let's not forget about silences, because with the legendary that resets Avenger Shield, you can silence left and fucking right, man. Everything is fucking silenced. Prot Paladin is fun. Prot Paladin has competitive tank damage. Prot Paladin has competitive tank sustain. We'll see how far it can actually climb in the Mythic Plus ladders and if it's going to be world first worthy. But for me, Prot Paladin is an easy S tier. If I didn't love Blood Decay so much, it would probably be in a tier all of its own. Let's go Warrior. Boy, did our Warrior boys suffered in the last couple of months. Warrior has been in a shit position even at the beginning of BFA, and it had to get buffed. Obviously Warrior was, probably still is, the strongest tank in pre-patch. No, I don't know if it's in pre-patch, but prior to the pre-patch in 8.3, it was definitely one of the strongest, if not the strongest tank, at least in dungeons. Might not have been in raid, but it was strong enough to be up there, at least if not on the first spot, maybe on the second spot. It's a tank that historically has a lot of tank damage, which is great. It has all of the tank mechanics that a tank needs to mitigate the proper damage, from shield block to shield wall, to ignore pain, to stunts, to leaps, to charges, to intercepts, to spell reflects. Jesus, need I say more? The problem is the numbers are just not there. It's taking a little bit way too much damage. It's just not there. I think it's just a little matter of small numbers tunings. It's one of the most fun tanks mechanically to play. In terms of mechanics on how it feels to go into your rotation and press buttons, as long as you know they're not nerfed into the fucking ground, it's, for me personally, it's more fun than even a Prot Paladin. It's really weird. Prot Warrior just feels right. If you ever want to learn a tank, and this is what we say on our stream all the time, I would always recommend starting with Prot Warrior. It's not, let's say, the easiest tank to start up. It's definitely not the easiest to master, but it makes sense. Prot Warrior just makes sense, and if they can just freaking do it properly and stop fucking around with it, then maybe we won't see this roller coaster of performance for Prot Warrior. Normally I would have put it into A tier, even S tier. It's just not there. It's just not there. It's depressing to see it consistently nerfed. The legendaries that were interesting were consistently nerfed, so it's probably a B tier for me as well. It's like itching to climb higher. It's so close. They can just address it properly. It's so close. And now we come back to Vengeance. Oh boy. Now, if you have been watching streamers or have played beta yourself, or even pre-patch, I think it's true for pre-patch as well, you will know that Vengeance is a fucking beast. In terms of performance, in terms of damage intake and damage output, Vengeance is there where it should be, where it always should have been. It was a shitty design to have you choose between dealing damage to keep aggro and surviving. Remember Gluttony? Remember Spirit Bomb? Fuck that. That got fixed. It's so much better now. It has some talent swaps around, it has Demonic now, and Fell Devastation is baseline, and that's a big, let's say, well, that's an important minor defensive, because one of the aspects where Vengeance excels a lot at the moment is in Mythic Dungeons. Mythic Dungeons kind of favor 1 minute type cooldowns, offensive and defensive, because that's kind of how action spikes in dungeons, in terms of how you pull the packs, in terms of when the damage comes in hard, when the damage needs to go out hard. So Fiery Brand, for instance, with the Burning Alive is bonkers. And not only that, like, I've just played with Vengeance Demon Hunters, and no matter who I play with, our very own Cabal as well, they just meld shit. They're just really good. They're really good. And it's nice to have options in terms of talent. Legendaries are incredibly fun, right? Demon Hunters have one of the more interesting tank legendaries. Maybe they're not the best legendaries in terms of performance, but they're fucking cool. So you can just I-beam something, and another Demon Hunter comes and I-beams with you. It's like, oh yes, I-beams all die. And I was always partial to Vengeance. Vengeance was one of the main tanks that I played in Legion. I really loved it because it was the new kid on the block. It makes sense. You're a big ass demon and you have to be threatening, you have to be able to do damage, and you have to be able to be tanky, right? Everybody has to be tanky, but dealing damage and being like all over the place, that's kind of the feeling of Vengeance. It's a really fun tank to play, and I, for one, am happy. More than likely I'll play Vengeance way more in Shadowlands than I did in BFA. Because in BFA was a little bit like, But for me, Vengeance is a solid A tier. And this kind of concludes our tank tier list. Now, this is the first take on the tanks. Things are changing every week with every new build. Things are getting balanced, nerfed, and buffed. People don't like to say nerfed and buffed, but it is what it is. We all know the controversy right now, but this is my opinion, guys. This is what I've played, this is what I've enjoyed, this is what I'll probably enjoy to play in Shadowlands. What about you? Do you agree? Maybe you don't agree. Maybe you can check the comments down below and tell us how wrong we are and what would a better tier list look like for tanks. Thank you for watching the video, and thank you to our patrons for supporting our content and through these icky times. Hope you enjoy the tier list, and of course we still have one more left. But if you're the viewer, enjoy these type of videos, because we do have a lot more things that our patrons and our Twitch viewers and subscribers support, and donators and everything. They support obviously the class guides, they support the news bulletins, they support the tier list videos, they support the streams. And if you're interested in doing that a little bit more, you can check the link down below. You'll see a link to our Patreon page. Thank you for watching the video. I'll see you next time. Peace.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.